Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is it. This is the course that launched hundreds of training sessions. This task, there's a reason that I gave it first. I believe that it's mission critical, that it is mission critical, and it applies to everything else that you're taught. Three basic things that a soldier has to do is shoot, move, and communicate. And this class today plays into all of those. And I wanted to make sure that whatever I taught, whoever I taught, that they had this information. And I don't know if it's been implemented everywhere. That remains to be seen. But I did my part. I passed it on, and it will remain the first class that I give for the brothers, because you need to implement it into everything that you do. So, stand by. Welcome back. So, when we talk about military discipline, you might have in mind parades, or maybe formations, or maybe those guys who stand out in front of the palace in London. And those are all discipline. Those are all military discipline. What we're discussing here is something more along the lines of operational discipline. So the first three that we're going to talk about, the primary three that probably every soldier in the world learns, are noise discipline, light discipline, and litter discipline, or trash or waste discipline. And if you stick around to the end, I'll give you two additional disciplines that we practiced here in Syria that were given to us by our brother Abu Thabit al-Jazrawi, Allah yarhamu. Starting off with noise discipline. Noise discipline can be anything that's going to give away your position to the enemy. It can be your voice, it can be the sound of your weapon, it can be a half-full water canteen. Now, noise, especially at night, has the ability to travel far distances. So even a whisper can be heard hundreds of meters away, given the right conditions. So this is why soldiers learn to minimize their sound signature. They try to communicate with hand signs, or they try to move stealthily so that they don't give away their position. And in nature, there's no such thing as metal on metal. Anytime you hear something that's metal on metal, immediately you know this is from human beings, because trees and rocks and grass don't make a metal on metal sound. So I put together a couple items here that seem to be some of the biggest culprits when it comes to noise discipline. Maybe this will give you an idea of what I'm talking about, and in the future you can come up with some of your own offenses, if you will. So the first one is this. Hopefully the microphone will pick it up. Anybody will be able to recognize that sound as the Kalashnikov. So I've been on operations where people didn't jack the round into the chamber far away, and when they got closer to the target, they put a round in the chamber, close enough to where the enemy could hear it, and it gives away your position immediately. Another one from the Kalashnikov. The selector switch. People don't follow their discipline correctly, and they flip through their selector switch. Now, if you just pick it up a little bit, you can move your selector switch without making any sound at all. Another big one is the sling, right? Your sling should be attached to your weapon so that it doesn't make any sound. Here we have a D-ring, right? Normally what happens is they'll hook this D-ring up somewhere on the weapon, right? And hook their sling to it, and when they start to move, this is going to give away sound, right? They might try to tape it down, they might try to take their precautions, but again, you still end up with metal on metal. What we normally do is we'll attach the sling to the front eye or holder with a piece of 550 cord or something strong enough that's not gonna break, but it's gonna hold the sling, it's gonna hold the weapon. But at the same time, It's also not gonna make any noise. Another one, keys. At the beginning of the revolution, a lot of people would carry this thing around, right? This South African knife, very popular. And what they would do is they would attach their keys to this. So when we would go training, right? Every time they would run, you would hear this thing bouncing around. So this is why you have to reinforce training. You have to move with your equipment. Some brothers, they would take extra ammunition in their vest. So inside their vest, in addition to their magazines, they would have AK-47 bullets in a bag or in a large pocket in the back. Sometimes they would put these inside of a plastic shopping bag, or later on a few of them realized that also made noise, so they would stick them inside socks and tie them up tightly. But some of them, they would throw them in there loosely. And sure enough, whenever you go to move, these things would jingle around and make noise. For me, this is more of a leadership problem. Before you go on operations, your battle buddy, your squad leader, the commander of the operation is supposed to be checking this stuff out. You're supposed to be inspecting your people to make sure that these things are being adhered to and being followed. So you need to pay attention to your noise discipline. And like I said in the beginning, and I will continue to say this over and over and over again, this is a mindset. This is something you have to train for. This is something you have to live up to, right? This is why you need to learn hand signals. You need to learn to move together. You need to learn how to walk. You need to learn how to talk differently. You need to learn how to communicate without speaking. And this takes training and it takes practice. You won't get it overnight. But the more you train on it, the more you practice it, the more it becomes second nature, and you learn to move. Even though you might be 6 individuals, 8 individuals, you learn to move as one body, and you learn to move together naturally. But all of this takes time. Some countermeasures for sound discipline: avoid metal-to-metal contacts at all costs. Some of these things you can tape them up. Some of them you can cover them in some kind of material. Depends on what we're talking about. The best precaution you can take is to train, and work out any bugs that you might have in your gear. The more you train with the gear that you use in operations, the less likely you are to make these mistakes. So, whenever you find something like that, you can fix it. Definitely, if you are a person who's going to carry extra ammunition, break it up into smaller batches and tie it up in some socks or something, because you don't want to give away your location or the location of your team. So that's our first discipline, noise discipline. Light discipline may bring to mind headlamps or flashlights, and that's true. These things, they do produce light and they will give away your position. But now it's become much broader with the technology, mobile phones, and some of these radios, they have screens on them now. Also the little transmit lights on the top of on the radios now. If it's sending or receiving, sometimes there's a little light, red, green, that'll go off, right? And people don't pay attention to these things, and it's just a beacon at night. Even a little bit of light from a match or from a lighter or from a cigarette will give away your position at a great distance. And there are examples from wars past, Korea and World War II, maybe even from Vietnam, I'm sure from Vietnam as well. The enemy would wait for somebody to start smoking a cigarette, and as soon as they would see the light grow on the cigarette, they knew that somebody was taking a drag. All they needed to do was aim at that light, and they would hit somebody right in the head. So what gave them away? Their light discipline. Other examples of light discipline, not at night, but actually during the daytime, is reflections. So scopes will reflect light and give away your position. Your glasses, eyeglasses, have the ability to reflect light and give away your position. The face on your watch can also give away your position if it reflects light in the direction of the enemy. I tend to keep a blanket in my car. Whenever we would park up, I would throw the blanket over the front window of the car, because when airplanes fly over, they can see the reflection from vehicle windows, and they can use that as a point of reference for their bombing runs. And if you've seen any pictures from Syria, or if you're in Syria, you've seen the brothers when they cover their vehicles in mud. This is to reduce their light signature as well. That's also become a very popular practice here. I can give you an example of this from a place called Jisr Shahur here in Idlib, where the city itself was occupied by the regime forces, and the brothers would be in the mountains around the city looking for targets or doing reconnaissance, and the army would purposely take mirrors and direct the sun into the mountains and look for the reflections from the brothers doing their reconnaissance or observations or guard duty. And if they would see a flash of light from the sun that they were reflecting to the mountains, they would just shoot at that particular location with tank rounds. So the army would use the lack of light discipline in some locations to find where the brothers were located at and to shoot at them. Some countermeasures you might take for light discipline. If you need to use a light for some reason, there is a way to mix a blue filter and a red filter to come up with a kind of really low UV light. To use red lights is another possibility. If you cover yourself with a blanket or a tarp when you need to use this light in order to cut out the light signature. This would be like worst case scenario. It's not something that I would recommend, but it would be better to find an enclosed space if you absolutely had to use light. When it comes to electronic devices, if you don't need it, don't take it. And if you have to have it with you, then make sure that the faces that reflect or give light, that they're somehow covered. These little LED lights, you can cover them with electrical tape. However, whatever precautions you take, you need to make sure that they don't affect the operations of that particular piece of equipment. One form of light discipline you may have seen but may not be aware of is face paint. A lot of people will assume that face paint is only to help soldiers blend into their surroundings. It does help them blend into their surroundings. It does break up the facial signature in the brush. However, at night, we also use camouflage paint or something to black out the face. Also, for the reflection of light. A lot of people are not aware that the oils in your skin can also reflect the light. So face paint is not only for camouflage, it also helps to cut down on the facial reflection at night if there's any light from the moon or from the surrounding area, that it doesn't reflect that light. And this is regardless of a person's skin color. It doesn't matter if you're sheet Viking white or if you're dark African black. Every human being produces oil in their skin, and the camouflage paint helps to cut down that signature. It's not just about camouflage. It's not the only thing they use it for. The third discipline that we're going to talk about from the original three is litter discipline. Litter discipline is that we don't leave any sign for the enemy to follow us or to give away our presence. It's become an incredibly bad habit that people are in the habit of throwing garbage on the floor after they eat or open a stick of gum or whatever it is they have in their hands. They just like an automatic reaction, they just throw it on the streets. And this is personally one of my pet peeves. Yani, first of all, as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the dunya as a masjid. We're allowed to pray anywhere on the planet, with a couple of exceptions. So I don't know a single Muslim who would leave waste inside the masjid or who would litter inside the masjid. So why is it that when you're outside walking on the street you would just throw garbage on the ground when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you this blessing? And this is for normal Muslims. We're not talking about the mujahideen. The mujahideen should obviously strive to be at a higher standard. And it drives me crazy when you go to locations where brothers have absolutely no discipline in this respect. And to me, again, like I said before, more than anything else, this is a leadership failure, which I'll talk about in a minute. As far as litter discipline goes, especially now with drones, this is a whole new level of technology, and it brings about a whole new set of dangers. So per people just leaving trash laying around, this is leaving sign for the drones to pick up a human presence in that location. So we were taught never to leave anything on the ground, and yeah, obviously this is not the reason for these large cargo pockets in military gear, but we were taught that when we're eating or when we're training or providing first aid, that any of the waste that we have, if there's no place to specify to throw it away, you keep it inside your cargo pockets until you have a place to throw it away at. So the people that I went through the military with, they all walked on the same page. I don't remember anybody who would, even in their free time, throw anything on the ground. And when I talk about mindset, and when I talk about this being instilled in the person, this is something you have to live by. The reason people do this is because it's become a habit. The minute you let it become a habit is the minute you're gonna do it on operations, or you're gonna do it in the field. And this is something that needs to be avoided. On the other side, when I go back to talking about leadership, if you're responsible for people, it doesn't matter if you're responsible for you and your battle buddy, or if you're responsible for a squad, or if you're responsible for a battalion. Leadership are the ones who are supposed to enforce this. Leadership are the ones who are ultimately should be held accountable for these types of lack of discipline. And I never really thought about this when I was in the military, because we live in an environment where it's pretty sterile. You would never walk into a base where it's filled with trash. It doesn't happen. Whether they contracted somebody to keep the place clean, or whether the soldiers themselves, after the morning formation, were delegated to keep their area clean, there was no trash left on the ground. When I came here, I went to have a meeting with the leader of a different group. I don't want to give their name. The person that we went to meet, he had on a tailor-made uniform. He had on glasses. His eyeglasses were probably more expensive than everything I owned here inside the country or outside the country. The guy was rich, and he was. This was 2012, and he was accepting reporters to come and interview him for the operation that they were responsible for in those days. So the reporters would come, they would see this guy, spit and polished, and the picture of leadership. His tent was presentable, but everything outside of his tent was trash. Everything outside of his tent was trash. And it clicked with me that this guy, despite the appearance, was not in charge. He was not. First of all, he had no knowledge, and secondly, the people he was living in a trash can. He was literally living in a trash can. His soldiers would come and eat next to his tent, and they would just throw garbage on the ground. He didn't know to tell them to clean it up, and they didn't know any better than to throw it away. So this is when it clicked with me that this is a serious reflection on leadership. And I've been also in other locations where I would go to one group of people and their area is immaculate. I mean, absolutely immaculate. You could eat off the floor. I found it to be really impressive. Then I'll go to another group, and yani, you would find trash everywhere. And the part that makes me upset is it's something that's so easily fixed. Yani, whoever it is that brought in the supplies can take out the trash the next day or in the afternoon or later on. Yani, they bring you in your supplies in boxes and in bags. So when you're finished, gather up the trash, put them back in the same bags, put them back in the same boxes, and when your administrative guy or Idari guy, when he comes in the next time, load the stuff in his vehicle and let him throw that stuff away, far away from your location. If you don't have that ability, then dig a place to bury it or find a way to burn it. Yeah, if those options are available, so that you're not leaving sign. And as I said, all of these disciplines, if the soldiers don't have them, it reflects directly upon the operational knowledge and the operational discipline of the leadership. So please keep these things in mind, and hopefully this will raise the level of awareness for the ones who need it, inshallah. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this class has been the first lesson that I've given to hundreds, thousands of soldiers since 2012. One of my first students who took this class, he took the initiative and he added 2 more things that he gathered from my lessons and thought they should be added. So I put them here in honor of him, Abu Thabit al-Jazrawi, who was killed here in an airstrike in Syria. The first one that he added was the discipline of ammunition, ammo discipline. So we have a rule that we don't shoot automatic. First of all, it's inaccurate, and secondly, you go through your rounds too quickly. So Abu Thabit, he added ammunition discipline. First of all, like I said, that you don't shoot automatic, and secondly, that every bullet should hit its target. I remember when we were getting ready to come here, one bullet, the price of one AK bullet in 2012 was $5. $5 a bullet. So that means that a magazine, an entire magazine, would be $150 to fill it up. So you would have brothers that were shooting off rounds automatic. Sometimes they were celebrating and shooting them in the air. Safety-wise, not a good idea to shoot in the air. I'm against it, and I've talked about it from the beginning of the revolution. My soldiers are not allowed to shoot in the air. Those bullets, they go up and they come back down. Most recently, after the liberation, there were a lot of people who were hit with falling bullets. Mostly women and children and people who lived in the camps where they didn't have a concrete roof over their heads. This has happened, and this is 14 years after the beginning of the revolution. I've been talking about this since 2012. The other thing is that each bullet is an amana. It's a trust. So I saw with my own eyes in 2012 Turkish women taking the gold off of their wrists in order to donate it for the Syrian revolution. This is when we had few weapons, few bullets, no money or little money, and these women were giving what was in their hand in order to support the revolution. And you had people here, and again, I would say it was the beginning of the revolution. There wasn't a lot of knowledge. There was sometimes people just did what they thought it was okay to do. It wasn't necessarily okay, but it happened. So they would shoot off, a magazine of rounds, 150 bullets, $150 worth of bullets is gone. So, again, going back to the leadership issue, you need to hold your soldiers accountable. You need to enforce the discipline. There's no reason for people to be shooting in the air. And this reflects heavily on the people in charge. The last discipline given to us by Abu Thabit Allah yarhamu was the discipline of time, that we use our time wisely, spend it in reading Quran, making ibadah, trying to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, increasing your training, reviewing your training, so that you don't waste it on frivolous things, especially when we talk about being in ribat and being in camps and these other things. You may have some downtime. It's best to use the downtime wisely rather than swiping on some of these new applications or using your phone or whatever people do. So Abu Thabit was a big person to press people to use their time wisely and constructively. So this is the end of my lesson. I don't think that anybody could ever do this lesson justice. However, there is a considerable amount of information that the brothers will benefit from. If you would like to support the project, please feel free to either contact me via Gmail or use the link at the end of the video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bro, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's done, it's all over, that's it. I'm finished. Yalla, go on. Go on. See you next class. Assalamu alaikum.